I found this shirt, which I think is literally a child's extra large, in that closet over there, and it makes me feel like Ricky Thompson. But I love it. Hello, welcome back to my channel. For this week's video, I wanted to talk a bit about the books that I've read so far this year. I made a resolution that I was gonna read 52 books, which is basically one a week. I was one of those kids who just absolutely loved to read. To give you a bit of context, I read all 3 books in the Hunger Games series in 4 days when I was in 7th grade. And then, I don't know, I just like fell out of it. I guess like, I got a phone and I got busier and I just found myself reading less and less. And I really didn't rediscover it until last year when the world shut down.
I get it, like, I respect it.
Coming into 2021, I knew that since I had so much more time on my hands, that I wanted to devote a bigger part of my life to reading. And I think I've done a pretty good job. It's March 26th, and I'm currently reading my 28th book. I think. Yes, I'm reading my 28th book. I didn't think that I would read them this fast, but I mean, hey, it's a good thing because so far we're on track to accomplish the resolution. I'm not gonna talk about every single book I've read this year. I guess basically just the highlights of the books that stuck with me the most and then some of the ones that I hated the most because there were definitely a couple. But before we do that, if this is your first time seeing my face, hi, my name is Chia. I make videos here on the internet, and it would make me super happy if you could subscribe and also hit the notification bell. Also, if you ever want to know what I'm reading, I have a reel on my Instagram that you could just go and keep up to date with everything that I'm reading because I post every single book on one reel called Books 2021 and give a little bit of a review. So while you're over there, you should also follow me on Instagram. Okay, great, let's get started. I have a pile of books here. Oh God. Okay. I almost dropped them, but I caught it. These books I haven't actually read. I've read a couple of them, but these are the books that I have gotten from my library because I don't like to buy books because some books I just don't want to read more than once. And if I own the book, it's just sitting there wasting my money and wasting my space. I just go to the library. It's better for my wallet, better for the environment, I guess. Is it better for the environment? But let's start with the books that I have here that I have read. I just finished reading If We Were Villains by ML Rio. This book was really good. I will say that it took me like the first 70 or so pages to get into it, and it took me 3 days to read those 70 pages. But after that, I finished the rest of it in like 2 days. Basically, the premise of this book is that it's a murder mystery almost. So it's being told by the person who was convicted for the crime 10 years later once he's finally released from jail. And he's telling it to the detective who worked his case. So you're learning about what's happened along with the detective because the guy wants to know what really happened. I think I rated it an 8.5 on my Instagram. And I think if you're into like dark contemporary or like mystery-ish books, this is definitely for you. The glare of my window is just like really hitting it, but this is the book. Right now, I'm reading You by Caroline Kepnes, and this book goes so hard. Oh my God. I wish that I could be reading this right now and it'd be the first time that I'm like really being introduced to the premise because it's so good. The author does an amazing job at really putting you inside Joe's head and just making you realize how crazy he is. You just get so much more of his like thought process, and it's honestly kind of scary. It's kind of crazy how he rationalizes things and how he reasons with himself that he's the good guy in the entire scenario. I have like 30 pages left and I was reading it last night, but I was just so tired I couldn't continue, so I'm gonna finish it later today. Hi from the future. I've finished the book and it ended just as beautifully as it started. It was so amazing. Take a shot every time I say that. I think one thing that's different between the show and the book is that in the show you find yourself kind of like rooting for Joe even though he's the bad guy, but in the book there's never an instance where I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope he gets the girl, because you're just so constantly being exposed to like the insanity of his thoughts. I also never gave the premise of the book, but it's like a thriller-ish type of book. Like Joe is stalking this girl that he is really in love with, according to him, and he just like will stop at nothing, not even murder, to get closer to her. But it's a 10 out of 10 from me. Chef's kiss. Start with the books that I didn't like. Let's just get the worst out of the way. I read Midnight Sun. It's by Stephanie Meyers and it's the first Twilight book, but in Edward's point of view. I really wanted to like it.
I loved the Twilight series.
I drank the entire jug of Kool-Aid. To this day, still have rosaries on both of my bedposts because I was so scared that a vampire was gonna come get me. So I was like, I have to protect myself. And I just never ended up taking them down. So I was super excited to get like a new book, but I didn't like it. I couldn't even finish it. I got like 400 something pages in, and after that point I was like, I literally cannot take any more of this. I think it's one of those things where like when you're younger, some things are just like cool, you know? Like, oh my gosh, like
Edward is like a vampire and he knows what he wants and he's super protective of it. And like, oh my gosh, he watches her sleep and he just is like so romantic.
It did not hit the same as it did when I was 12. Just a cute 9 years. And yeah, that made all the difference. All the little things that should have been red flags the first time around were like blaring. There were so many I could barely see the pages. Now it's just a man who literally stalks her, is super possessive, ultra violent, says that he wants to literally kill her.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Just like textbook abusive behavior that I couldn't get behind. I think when I rated it on my Instagram, I gave it like a 6. That was generous. It's like a 2. A generous 2. Another book I didn't really like was Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, and I really wanted to like it. It was a Black woman who wrote it, and it was recommended to me a couple times, so I definitely was expecting to love it, and I didn't. I think part of it was the fact that it opened up in 2024, and that's in 3 years. It's like a dystopian book where like the world is like going to basically, and like they're living in factions, and like resources are so hard to come by, and like water costs more than gas. And with the way the world has been going right now, I don't need to read a book that's that close in the future. Oh, damn. Sorry, I just opened my Instagram to go to my reels and Lil Nas is just like butt ass naked. Another book that I didn't like was Well Read Black Girl, though I will say that one was on me because it's a collection of anthologies and I just don't like short stories. I hate it when it just breaks up and starts again. Like, I like a book to flow. So that one was on me. I think if I was somebody who liked that style of writing, I would have liked it a lot more. But because I just don't, I couldn't vibe with it. So I think I ended up giving it like a 6.5.
I also didn't like Crazy Rich Asians. TLDR. Too many shallow one-time characters were introduced, so it was hard to follow sometimes. Overall kinda meh. Movie was better.
Now for the books that I absolutely loved. I've already covered If We Were Villains and You, which are both really good. Reading The Hate You Give, and that was a phenomenal book. I kept crying. I could not stop crying. And I read at night, so like I literally just wash my face and like put on my like night products, and I was just like washing them off again. It was insane.
I don't really explain this book at all, so I'm gonna take it from here. For those of you who don't know, The Hate You Give is about a teenage girl who is in a car with her friend. They're both Black, and her friend is shot by a police officer. And so the rest of the book is essentially her kind of coping with that, and the two sides of herself, the person that she is when she's with her white schoolmates and the person that she is when she's at home, like in the hood, with people who are a part of gangs and everything. And it's one of those books that you read, at least for me, it was one of the books that I read where I just felt so heard. And every emotion, I felt it so strongly. Like when they laughed, I rejoiced with them, I mourned with them. It was such an exceptionally done book, and I had to kind of keep putting it down every now and then because it was very heavy, but I really recommend it.
Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. Oh my gosh, so good. Basically, it's these two twins who are born in this town for just like light-skinned Black people. Like all of them are extremely light-skinned, and some of them could be very white passing, but they don't integrate with white people. They just stay in their town. And then the twins run away and they like live in New Orleans until one of the twins leaves the other one, leaves her sister, and like runs away with a man. And then the twin who's left has to go back to her town because she's like escaping an abusive relationship. And then so the two of them basically for the first time in their lives are separated. So then the story cuts back and forth between the twins and their daughters whose paths eventually cross. It really, quite frankly, is so well done. It was so well written, and I really enjoyed it. I just picked up The Mothers, which is also by Britt Bennett. I haven't read it, but I'm really excited too because it seems like the same kind of thing where it follows the characters through different parts in their lives. So I'm really excited to like actually start reading it. Also, another honorable mention would be One of Us is Lying. Oh my gosh, that book was so good. It was so good. It's a murder mystery. So a set of kids enters detention and then one of them dies. And so all the other kids in that detention room are now suspects in this murder case, and the whole thing just starts unraveling. I read the whole thing so fast. It was 1,000% a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, it was so good. I also read the follow-up to it, One of Us is Next, which I don't think was as good, but it was still really well done. And because I like those books so much, I picked up another book by the same author, Two Can Keep a Secret. I don't even know what this one's about. I really didn't even read the synopsis. I was just like so sold on this author's work that I decided I'm just gonna dive in blindly and see what it's about. And so I'm hoping this is also good. I think my top 3 books for the year would be, in no particular order, Becoming by Michelle Obama. That book was so phenomenal. I think it was just so refreshing to read a modern day tale about a Black woman who like climbed her way to the top. And reading it kind of gave me a new perspective on her because she's like Michelle Obama, but like, I don't know, it's just reading her memoir really gave me, I guess, a better glimpse of her as a person, because I guess, I'm not trying to say she wasn't a person, but I guess I never thought of it that way because I had just seen her as like the Michelle Obama. But I kept crying. I'm a very emotional reader, what can I say? At the end of the book, I just put it down and just started crying. Like, it was so moving and emotional, and if you haven't read it, I 1000% recommend it. It's a 10 out of 10 from me. Number 2 would be a book from the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness. That whole trilogy was so good. It made me feel like I was 12 again and like reading the Hunger Games. It was just like that vibe, the whole like sci-fi dystopian. I found it because Tom Holland is starring in a movie that's inspired by the first book in the series. The second book, The Ask and the Answer, which is on my top 3 list, pulls at my heartstrings. Like, there was one point when I just started sobbing because I can't say what he did without actually spoiling the hell out of it, but it was so good. It's a dystopian world where like the men have like noise, which is just their thoughts broadcast. And then like there are no women in this the main character's town, but then he finds like one random girl. I think that's just like me saying like a lot of stuff without telling you what really happens. It's so good, please take my word. It's so good. And then number 3 would be Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi. That book was just so well done. For one, it was just like, I don't know.
I think at this point it's really clear that I struggled for whatever reason to properly and completely iterate any thought that I had, especially in this next clip when I'm talking about this book. So I'm just gonna take it from here. It's kind of like a love story and a life story. Like, it revolves around 2 main characters, Obinze and Ifemelu. And Ifemelu is the main character. She goes to America for some amount of time. Then Obinze goes to the UK, and like it's basically just about how they kind of go in and out of each other's lives. But at the same time, they're living their own lives, so their relationship is pretty periphery to the entire story as a whole, which is why I think it's predominantly a life story before a love story. And as a Nigerian American, it felt really refreshing to read a story that was more modern than a lot of the other books that I have been reading, but also that took place in America, because a lot of the stories that I read take place outside of America. So it felt great to kind of read something that took place in the place that I live.
So that's it from me. Basically a list of honorable mentions. I read a lot of other books that I didn't talk about, but I feel like this video would be so long if I sat down and gave in-depth reviews of every single book that I've read so far. I think I might do another one of these videos in a few months when I've read more books. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and also let me know what you're currently reading and if you have any book recommendations, because I love getting book recommendations. I have a list of them on my phone and I'm just like slowly working my way through. That being said, I hope you guys have a phenomenal day and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Let it go, make my body go. Take our bodies higher and higher and higher. We can go till the